First things foundation, it does aid. We aid people. I hate this concept, okay? But I want to hear from a symbolic thinker and someone, an Orthodox brother, but just a person who's made some sense out of all this. Our concept is that aid is for you. So when Jonathan Pageau goes down to the food bank, it's for you. And here's why. It's because when you go down, if it's a sacrifice of some sort, in other words, if you're going into the ground in some ways as a seed, what's happening is you're being reborn through the process of aid. And so we can't lose track of that. And so our whole model is that you're not really going to aid somebody else unless you're in some sort of modus of I don't like suffering is the word for an Orthodox Christian. For I think a modern person, like, I don't really get it. You whip yourself or something. But what you have to do, so we go and live right alongside everybody who supposedly is suffering. And then we live just like they're doing. And then we spend 2 years. Nobody wants to do this, Jonathan. Nobody wants to go do this. But what happens is when you come out the other side, what you did is probably a project or 5 or 10. But what you really did is you did this thing, like Kant talks about glasses. You really stripped off a pair of glasses that you thought you had on, and you become somebody new. And then that is also an outcome of aid. And it should be. And where a project doesn't have that happening, and I pick on some people, but I love people who want to help. But if you're taking a bunch of kids for a weekend to a foreign country and they're putting up a wall and then they're flying back home, there's no down in that. So they can't come up. So am I crazy? Can you speak to this concept?
No, I agree. You know, when I spent 7 years in Africa, and I work with Mennonites, actually. So I work with Mennonite Central Committee. And the reason why I worked with Mennonites was because exactly of that perception that they had. Like, they had a very similar perception to what you're talking about. That is, we had no salary. We had a stipend, and we lived in local neighborhoods. You know, we were the only white people in our neighborhood for years. And so, and also they basically tell us for the first 6 months, you actually don't do anything.
What?
You just learn the language. You learn the language. You figure out like where you are, build a community, build relationships. And then after several months, like it's obviously flexible, but after several months, then you actually put your foot out and start to see if there are some things you can connect together. And that has been really, like, for us, it was amazing because all that time, like you said, the first few months, you have the time to break down your prejudice, the prejudice you didn't even know you had, break down your comfort zone, break down all of that, so that when you finally have friends and a community and a little bit of connection, and you've also been able to discern the people who are just sharks, who are just want to get something from you, you start to kind of find your way to see pearls in people of value and people who are sincere. And then, like the project we built in Congo, since until COVID, I don't know if it's still going to continue, but until COVID, it was still going. And this was and this is 15 years after we're gone. And it was just run by local people doing their own thing. It's just because we had it's not a tribute to us. It was a tribute to the time that we spent to just figure out, like, hey, this is a really good person. And like, I'm going to invest in this person. And then, like you said, you put the seed in the right earth, and then it just grows on its own, you know.
So you saw that. That's fantastic. I didn't even know we were doing the Mennonite thing. We were talking about Cyril and Methodius when we got very first started with this. That's fascinating. I didn't even know.
Well, Cyril and Methodius are a great example of exactly that, because they basically listened and paid attention, and then offered to the Slavs something which was both theirs, like both the Slavs, but also added value to what the Slavs already had. It was like, we're going to give you a written language, you know, in your own language. And it's like, you can now use this, not just for liturgy. This has a whole lot of other applications, like this very powerful thing that they offered. And so I think that's a great example. Yeah. Using Cyril. When you, like, if I go to Africa, it's like, if I go to Congo, for example, that's where we went most of the time. We were in Kenya as well, but like, especially in Congo, it's obvious that there's a massive difference. And there's definitely something that I have that can be added value to the people who are there. And there's something that they have that is definitely going to be an added value to me. And so in that relationship, there's like this mutual learning and this mutual exchange, which I think, and it's also because the reality is that I'm coming from a place where that has more resources in terms of money, like just in terms of the rich being a rich and giving to the poor. And so that's a reality which we don't want to, we can't ignore. And so coming in as a rich person and then being in communion with people who have more poverty and trying to find ways to be able to plant seeds so that they grow, not just dropping money on people or, or also thinking that the fact that I have money means that I can tell everybody what to do, but rather trying to find points of communion where my resources and your potential are going to create something awesome, right? If you only, it's like you meet someone and right? You meet someone and you're like, if this guy or this woman had resources, they would knock it out of the park. And you just see it. And you see the other person who's like, oh, this guy just wants, he just thinks that he just wants money or he thinks that that's all that counts. But you see someone who's already doing something, who's like, hustling and really trying to make things work. It's like a pillar in their community. And you think, wow, that person had resources. They would just.
We have a name for those cats. We call them impresarios. And really what our job is to hunt them and find them.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's exactly, I totally agree with that. Like all you do is try to find good people and then the rest is going to happen.